CityCast listeners dig us because our vibe is more conversation and less interview. We know and love talking about DC to help you get the most out of it. Well, Eagle Bank is no different. Their friendly personnel know all about personal banking and are ready to help you maximize your finances. And business owners enjoy tailored solutions from dedicated bankers who can help navigate complex business challenges, all with the friendly Eagle Bank vibe. Visit them today at eaglebankcorp.com.
Today on CityCast DC, it's Parks Week, sponsored by Casey Trees, a week of coverage celebrating DC's beautiful green spaces. And if you're hearing more about foraging lately but don't know where to start, you are not alone. April Thompson, culinary chair of the Mycological Association of Washington, D.C., explains what you need to know to safely and deliciously forage in the DMV. Today's Wednesday, June 12th. I'm Bridget Todd, and here's what DC is talking about. April, I feel like I'm hearing more and more about foraging lately, but I personally do not have a ton of experience with it. I feel like a lot of people listening maybe don't have a ton of experience with it. And so I'm sort of wondering what it's all about and what the point is. But then I heard something that really piqued my interest, which is that you made mushroom beer. What exactly is this? What's it like? What's going on?
Yeah, this is our second annual mushroom beer, courtesy of the Mycological Association of Washington. I am the club's culinary chair, and we have a number of, well, obviously we're all mushroom enthusiasts, but we also have some beer makers who thought it would be great to try to put mushrooms in beer and see how that goes. It was a total experiment. Not that we are the first to do that, but we first did that with Waverly Brewery in Baltimore and made a very lovely, this was a year and change ago. I'm going to try to remember what the style was. I believe it was a brown ale, and it was a crowdsourced beer. Essentially, we all got together with a number of different cultivated wild species. I think the total count was over a dozen species, and loaded up the beer, and the result was amazing. We obviously enjoyed it for ourselves, but then we distributed it in a couple of places in DC and got great feedback on it. So kind of TBD how much of the mushrooms imparted flavor to the beer, because there was a lot going on, but I like to think at least it had a medicinal value to it, because we did throw in things like reishi and turkey tail that are known to have medicinal value.
So why should folks be foraging?
Oh, there are so many reasons to forage. First of all, for me, because I am an experimentalist in the kitchen, I love these different flavors and textures that you can't buy in the store, essentially. There are also countless nutritional and medicinal benefits to a lot of the wild plants. In fact, something like garlic mustard, which is really prolific and noted as kind of a quote-unquote invasive species in the area, that green has more nutritional value than any other wild or cultivated plant, according to a forager named John Callis, who, if you go into his book, you can see a very detailed table of all this data. And then it's free food.
What are some of the different edible plants that you can actually forage and find right here in DC?
Oh my gosh, there are so many different wild edible plants and fungi you can find right here in the city. One year, I think it was 2020, I set out to find 100, and by mid-year, I had exceeded that. So really, it depends on the season. Summer and fall is a great time for wild edible mushrooms. In the spring, you have a lot of great weeds that will come up in your own backyard that are edible. Everything from chickweed to violets to things that can be used for tea, like purple dead nettle and purple henbit. Mallow is something else that I've seen all winter long, actually, into the spring, and I expect to see it year round right now, which is a little bit odd. But some of these plants, especially I think with the heat effects that we are seeing in urban areas, especially my neighborhood. I'm in Parkview, DC, which is the hottest neighborhood in DC. And I don't mean that metaphorically. So you do kind of have some of these microclimates that, for better or for worse, can give you some of these plants year round.
Well, since you've been foraging in the DC area for kind of a while, have you noticed a change in the development in terms of climate change?
Anecdotally, I have seen a difference in what we call the phenology of some of these plants, which is basically when they first start to appear and in what kind of quantities. For example, chickweed is a very robust plant that usually comes out in early spring. It will kind of blanket your garden beds almost. It's sort of like a low-lying ground cover. It's actually one of my favorites. It's very mild. It's very versatile. But this past season, winter, I saw it all through the winter, which I think is kind of unusual. And I do attribute that to climate change, although I haven't actually done the data analysis year by year to really confirm that.
Hey DC, let's talk trees. We all know planting trees is one of the best ways to take care of our environment, our community, and our health. They combat climate change, cool our city, clean our air and water, improve our physical and mental health, bring our communities together. I mean, the list goes on and on. But what if we don't have any inhabitable space for trees? What if, in order to save our trees, we first need to save the soil in which those trees are planted? KC Trees is a local nonprofit working to conserve DC's green spaces and nearby nature that makes our city so great to live in. Visit kctrees.org to learn more about how to protect our green spaces and natural areas.
Speed into success. Learn French. Much like a high-speed train, Alliance Française's immersive French language classes propel you towards fluency. Unlock a world of personal and professional possibilities when you become a member and learn French at the renowned Alliance Française chapter in DC. Tradition and modernity intertwine, offering you an unparalleled learning experience that includes language classes, cultural events, and the only French loan library in the Mid-Atlantic region. Embrace the language that bridges cultures and enriches your resume. The summer season starts on July 6th, so enroll today. All ages and levels are welcome. If you sign up by June 13th, you get $20 off the tuition fee. Find our French classes and more at www.francedc.org. The summer session starts on July 6th, so enroll today.
So is there anything I need to know in terms of foraging? Like, can I just go out and start taking things off trees?
So we say there are old foragers and bold foragers, but there are no old, bold foragers. So you do have to be careful, especially with things like mushrooms and berries, because another saying is that all mushrooms are edible and some are only edible once, because we do have right in our city some mushrooms that will kill you. So it is to be respected, but not feared in the sense that, just like now that I'm meeting you, Bridget, if I saw you again, I would recognize you. And so there's a process for learning to identify and getting to know those plants and fungi so that you can be safe. And unfortunately, with mushrooms, there aren't any hard and fast rules of thumb. You kind of have to learn them one by one. But there are what I call kind of your 101 plants and fungi that are a lot easier to identify. And those also tend to not have poisonous lookalikes to worry about. And that's one of the first things you want to kind of look at too, is what are potentially doppelganger plants or fungi that you should be aware of when you're hunting for a particular species.
Have you ever had that happen to you? You thought you were foraging and eating one thing and it turned out to be another?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Years and years and years ago, visiting a friend out in Colorado, I did mistake a berry. And this is so long ago, I don't even know what I thought that was and what it was. All I know is I was very, very sick for a few days. It was really, really not pleasant. I think there's this curve that when you're first foraging, there's a lot of trepidation at first, and then you kind of get in this space of overconfidence. And I think I was there at that point, but that really put me in check. And I do remember that experience because, that could have been something that could have potentially killed me. I haven't had anything like that happen since. I am really careful. I teach this, and I tell people, start with plan at a time. And if you're not 100% sure, then leave it alone. We're not in the zombie apocalypse yet where you have to take those kind of risks. So just don't do it.
So for someone listening who is like, that sounds like something I want to do, how can people learn more about how to forage?
There are lots of resources out there for people who are interested in learning to forage. I teach workshops that are especially focused on urban foraging, but there are groups like I mentioned, the Mycological Association of Washington, which if you're interested in mushrooms is a super great resource. It's only $20 a year to join, and you have access to just so many cool opportunities. Then there are countless Facebook groups also you can join. Some of them are focused on particular things, like there are ID groups for specific families of mushrooms also, if you're interested in, kind of getting to know a particular family. There are groups like Capital Naturalists. That's more of a all-purpose naturalist group, but where you'll learn a lot. And obviously resources like books. And I can't forget iNaturalist, because this is my number one go-to resource when trying to identify something and also contributing to citizen science, because essentially it's an app where you can take photos of something that you're seeing. The app will give you suggestions as to what that species may be. So what's cool about that is it's just not a sort of a one-way loading up information and giving you back, what AI thinks this thing may be. There are professional scientists that are using this data. They will come behind your observation, your potential ID, and give feedback. And it's something that really anyone who's interested in nature in the city should download.
Yeah, I have the iNaturalist app on my phone. I use it all the time.
Yay!
So as the culinary chair of the Mycological Association of DC, do you have any recommendations of food dishes that someone could make with goods that they foraged in DC?
Oh my gosh, there are so many interesting dishes that you can make with wild forage goods. It really depends on the particular plant or fungi. But let's say for your wild spring greens, of which there are many, pestos are great. And a lot of people think, oh, pesto, you got to be made with basil. But I rarely use basil in my pesto. I use everything from chickweed to garlic mustard to just all sorts of herbs. And that would be a good one. That's a very simple place to start. Geez, when it comes to mushrooms, there's just such a world of flavors. And that's, I think, something that a lot of people who say, oh, I don't like mushrooms, don't necessarily understand that we're talking about an entire kingdom with all sorts of different flavors and textures that, if you don't like your typical button mushroom, there may be something out there for you.
Foraging really opens up a world of flavor possibilities. That's a great way to think about it.
For sure.
April, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. This is great.
And listeners, here's interim producer Ash Durbin with your Casey Trees tip of the day.
If you're looking to add mulch around your trees, just remember the 3-3-3 rule. Make a ring of mulch around your tree that's 3 inches deep and a 3-foot radius from the trunk, and make sure to leave a 3-inch space right around the tree trunk. Stacking the mulch right on top of the trunk results in poor tree health.
Thanks, Ash. That's all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend who is down to go foraging? You can rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with even more news from around the city. Talk to you then.